So today's guest is a very special guest. It's Col Price. Col has been working in the industry for probably as long as I'm alive on this planet, which is 30 years. He's been predominantly recently working for film industry, but he's been art directing games too. Some of his projects includes Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Dune Part 2, Alien Romulus, Masters of the Air. I mean, I could go on, and I'm like, it's so insane. How are you doing? How's
I'm doing
everything?
good. Doing good, yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
So usually, like we've been talking a bit before. So usually, how we go around is we talk about the beginnings. How did you discover concept art? What was the thing? Like, every single person, every single concept artist has their own kind of beginnings, and we usually do like a quick deep dive into it. So, like, what was the thing? How did you start?
God, that's going back a few years now.
Hmm.
Yeah. To be honest, I got into the concept art side of things almost as a sidetrack because I started off in the games industry way back in the 90s. And previous to that, I'd always done artwork and painted and was really interested in like stuff like Frazetta and then the Chris Foss stuff and all those kinds of 70s, 80s sort of sci-fi stuff. Um, and I was actually working in theatres, going way back, working in theatres, doing just basic set painting, set design.
Hmm.
And I came out from that. I was only in it for about 9 months. It was super hard work. And I came out from that and I came back home because I've been sort of on the road. And I ended up working in some really bad factory because I'd always wanted to get into film since I was a kid. And literally after about a couple of weeks, I can't do this. And I went back to college, did a degree in specialised in digital special effects because they just started to appear. And because there wasn't any jobs in the film industry at that point. I mean, literally there was nothing in the UK. I ended up by chance just getting into the games industry.
Mm-hmm.
I actually went in as an animator for the first couple of years. And my first job was up in a place in Sheffield. And we were doing I think it was like PlayStation. In fact, it probably was just before PlayStation 1 came out. And we were doing PC games. And I was doing stuff for Lego at the time. And I was still doing sketches on the side and stuff like that. And then from then, I jumped on to another company. And that was just doing really boring snooker games.
Mhm.
And then my big break came when I got asked to join, which would have been Psygnosis at the time, and Sony. And I was working on Wipeout Fusion and Formula One as an art director.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I was still doing sketches at the same time. Um, and it was always there for me to try and get into. But obviously, when I was an art director, it was more sort of management stuff. And then I worked for EA, and I was running the art department in the EA studio that we set up here in the Northwest. And again, all the projects I was still trying to head up, sort of doing the concept art, but it was really difficult to actually do anything like that. There was so much, and that type of time, it was really difficult to actually justify people doing concept art because no one was really into it at that time. Because I mean, it's literally only been, I would say, the last 10, 15 years that concept art sort of come into its own.
Hmm.
But I was always there and I was always trying to, force stuff to production and that and say to them, look, if we do mood boards and if we do concept work and, we map everything out, it's going to make production easier and so forth. So I kind of stumbled more and more into it. It wasn't until everything started to sort of pick up. I had a good friend of mine, Alex Virginie, you guys would probably know.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
I used to be Alex's boss.
Mhm.
I told him everything he knows. Now, Alex was brilliant. Alex was absolutely brilliant. I used to look at Alex's work and go, "Oh my god, this guy's just
Hmm.
genius, absolutely genius." Um, and Alex was like, "Oh, I'm doing some stuff on the side. I'm doing Thor. I'm working on Thor." And I was like, "Oh my god, that's what I want to do," you know. And
Mhm.
Alex left. Alex went to Canada. We were at Evolution Studios at the time, and Alex left, and he went over to Canada, but he was doing freelance stuff on the side. And then I was working on, I think it was Drive Club, and I was just like, you know what, I need to just do this. I need to just get in and do the art and get back to what I really wanted to do, which was just, paint, draw, and create.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's kind of how I stumbled into everything. I just, you know what, I got really lucky so many times, especially with getting the art director's roles. It was, I mean, I literally, you could, if if you put it in a film, people will go, "Oh, that's just ridiculous. That never happens." But I literally stumbled from like one position and then went into another, and it kept getting higher and higher. And I was like, "What is going on? This is just the look was just ridiculous."
Yeah,
Um,
right. Like sometimes I feel like this kind of a thing is in games. It happens in games. Like, do you
yeah,
feel like, I mean, there's definitely a part of luck in movies too, I guess,
Hmm.
right?
yeah,
I mean,
definitely,
but I've noticed it in games quite a lot,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
Like,
It is. My whole career has been pure luck.
oh, yeah,
Oh, I'm
let's
not
go.
sure about it.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I mean, your work
Honestly,
speaks for itself, you know?
yeah, it's just like I said, it's just been like stumble from one to the other, and yeah, it's been crazy. When I look back on it as well, it just feels like it's. I mean, the games industry now, when I look back at it, feels like another lifetime.
Hmm.
Even though I still do games now, um, that whole period of working in the studios, that just seems like a completely different universe. It's a really weird feeling to look back at that and to see what I'm doing now and then see what I was doing then.
Hmm.
It's really, really strange. Yeah.
So what's your like main idea, would you say, just going in like getting into sort of this more creative role, more film driven, but like you couldn't, you know, go into film straight away, so we went into games, right?
Yeah.
What like why films in the first place? Like what was the main sort of like inception or spark, you know?
Oh,
Was it like I
oh,
guess everybody has like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings
yeah,
or
yeah. I mean, I mean, all films from a really early age. I used to love watching films, and I'd watch them with my granddad and that. My grandfather was an artist as well, and he was also an actor. Um, and so right from the word go, I was always interested in films, and I remember watching War of the Worlds, and that was probably the first thing that gave me nightmares. Was the really original War of the Worlds,
Mm,
and I remember thinking, "Oh my god, these are great!" And I used to watch Ray Harryhausen films, and they were just like, mine would explode. Um, and then I would watch. Obviously, Star Wars came out, and that was a huge influence. But I think the biggest one was probably Blade Runner. I think
mm,
from watching like the really early Harryhausen stuff, like Clash of the Titans, and even watching the really, the original version of King Kong. That was kind of what I used to be into, and I was thinking, "Oh, right, okay, I want to get into stop motion animation," and then I'd be watching, as I grew older, I was watching, the Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that, and Tom Savini I was a huge fan of Tom Savini. I was thinking, "All right, now I want to get into prosthetics and makeup," but it was always behind the scenes in film. I just loved the idea of creating stuff and that was going on to the screen. But when I saw Blade Runner, it was like a bomb had gone off in my head.
Hmm.
Um, and seeing that for the first time when I think it was about 15, um, was just incredible. I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never seen the use of light and the use of color. Everything was raining. It felt like, in fact, the really weird thing was where our cinema was. we had this really small cinema, and it was set down underneath like a shopping centre, but there was only on lights. And when we came out, it was raining, and it felt like you'd walked out and you were back on the set, and it was raining and it was dark. And I remember there was three of us, and we were all like, "Oh my god, I've never seen anything like it,"
Mm.
And as soon as I saw that, that was like, that's what I want to do. But obviously, getting into the film industry back then was just such a wild dream. It just felt like possible. There's me in the north of England, and it's like Hollywood is a billion miles away.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think it's easier today. It's easy, I think, for people to jump into this industry, and it seems to be more attainable that you can actually get into doing these types of things of working for on Hollywood films or whatever. But back then, I mean, there was just nothing. It was incredibly difficult to get into, and even the games industry. I mean, I'd left university, and even in the games industry, it took me about 6 months of literally farming out show reels and sending CVs out, hundreds and hundreds of them to different studios, and then literally getting a lucky break in my first studio role.
Mm.
So yeah, it was incredibly difficult to do, but I mean, it's such a fantastic career. Um, I mean, I just think it's the best job in the world, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's
We're in pretty much similar boat.
Mm.
I
yeah,
mean,
you know. I mean,
yeah.
sometimes you'll be working and you're working on projects, and I've said this before. I've said this to a few people. That when I was working on the Matrix, and Camilla, you'll appreciate this one. When I was working on the Matrix, I remember when I first started off in the games industry. I think that was about 95, and the Matrix was just coming out,
Mm.
and so we would all be like, "Oh my god, have you seen the Matrix?" And we would watch the trailers and stuff like that. And then to go from that, and then to be sitting there and watching them films constantly on loop, and I'm thinking, "Oh my god, I'm working on a Matrix
Yes.
film," and it's like, wow, it's great. Yeah, but feelings like that are just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally relate because I was born in the late 80s, like in Poland, So I didn't have the Star Wars or anything like that because it didn't came on our TVs. Or I didn't watch it, maybe I should put it like that. But The Matrix was like the first movie which had like really like this gigantic impact on me. So we have like a burnt CD, like the pirate version of it. Because sorry, it was Poland, like 2000s.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I came back home from school, like every day I was watching it anew. Like I watched it like maybe 50 times. And then, like getting the call from them, hey, do you want to work on it? Fuck yeah. so so
yeah.
yeah, it was really amazing, yeah.
It's great. Yeah.
So when did you make the switch to work on movies? Which year was it and which project?
So it was 2014. Um, and I was doing Drive Club, and I got to the point where I was just doing ridiculous hours. I was head of art I was art director on that project. The project wasn't going very well, and it was just turning into one of those absolute nightmares. And we'd already had something like 3 years of crunch previously, because the problem with the studio was we were going from launch title to launch title, as in console launch.
Mm.
We just had all in from like PS2, PS3, and PS4, and it was just relentless. So by the time I got to doing Drive Club, it got to the point where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, all I'm doing is meetings. That was all I was doing. I was trying to do the concept art for Drive Club, and I was trying to force it as much as I could. Um, and I thought, you know what? If I don't do this now, if I don't leave now, and try and prove that I can do it as an artist, I'm never going to do it. And I think I was coming up to, I think I just hit 40 then, And so it was a big sort of a big step there. And you've got that looming age that's, you're on this train that's hurtling in one direction, and
Mm.
I'm thinking, I've got to do this. I've got to do this for my own sanity. And if I fail, I'll go back and I'll suck it up and I'll do management roles again. And so I literally left and decided I'm going to go freelance.
Mm.
And I got really lucky because I was working with, literally after a couple of months, I was posting stuff up on Twitter, and I was literally hammering Twitter all the time and just kicking as much personal work out as possible. And then I look back at it and it's dreadful. I'm thinking, oh my God, this stuff's who the hell? Anyway, someone gave me a break, and it was Simon McQuaid who did the Mortal Kombat films. He's
Mm.
just finished. And I was working on a project with him. He just got in touch with me out of the blue, and he said, I'm doing this pitch for a film. And I think we stayed on it. The pitch was like epic. I stayed on it for about 9 months with him. He eventually got rid of all the concept artists and just had me. And we were on it for months, and it was like this huge sprawling fantasy epic thing. And at the end of it, he said, I'm going to take on every job I do. I was like, great, And so we were doing lots of TV commercials, and I think Simon at that time was trying to get his break into directing a big Hollywood movie. And so we were always doing Hollywood pitches. So we get scripts come through, and we get, what do you think about this one? And anyway, he messaged me one day and he said, I've just got the script through for Mortal Kombat. What do you think we should do? And because we'd previously been looking at Underwater, which I absolutely love. I thought it was brilliant. And I think we did the first pitch, and then Simon went, I'm not into this. He said, well, I've got this one for Mortal Kombat. Should we have that? I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do that. So we ended up doing Mortal Kombat, and the weird thing is there was just me and Simon, and then there was a writer that came in, and so we do the round, go to the execs. Yeah, great. Can we see some more? And this carried on and this carried on. So we ended up doing this. It took 5 years to get that film through, just through pitch work, just with us. And we never even thought it was actually going to happen. The crazy thing is when it went into production, I'd been doing a few other things then, and I ended up getting a job from DNEG as a freelancer. And I was on Robotech. And then the film went into production, and I couldn't get on it because I was already doing Robotech. I was like, after 5 years, I couldn't maneuver, and I thought, I can't let the guys down because we're already on Robotech. And production started, and then Robotech went bump, evaporated, and I was like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? And then went straight onto the Matrix after that. And lots of other stuff after that as well, because working for DNEG was just fantastic. So it was kind of like again, there was lots of things that I got really lucky with. I even ended up at one point, I think it was about 2016, just bizarrely, I had a Chinese film director get in touch with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really bizarre. And he was like, I'm doing this big sci-fi TV show. Would you like doing some posters for us? So I was like, well, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll do some posters for you, It's freelance work. I'll take anything I can at the moment, And just by off chance, I said to him, if you need a hand with anything else, give me a shout. Literally within 24 hours, his assistant got in touch with me and said, would you like to come over to Beijing and come and work with us on this new sci-fi project? And I was like, yeah, okay. So I ended up going over to Beijing and Shanghai, and I went over there a few times. The project was completely and utterly nuts. They had no regard for budget. It was just, this is absolutely true. At one point, the story is bizarre. It was about a skateboarding gang that had these like super long skateboards, and one of the gang members was his father was an alien king, and the alien queen was a witch, and it was just anyway. They actually ended up building this road right in the middle of China, up in the mountains. They got the Chinese government to build them a road just so they could skateboard down for the film. I don't even know whatever happened to the film, because after about 2 years of on and off working on it, everything just seemed to fade into the ether. So I
Mm.
don't even know what happened. I don't even know what the title was. But going over to China was brilliant, and working with them, they were just fantastic. And in the meantime, Simon McCoy's messaging me, oh, we need this for this pitch, can you get some more stuff from Mortal Kombat? And I'm like, Simon, I'm just about to catch a plane. I've got a 10.5 hour flight back to the UK. And he's like, oh, I just need this, just need this. So yeah, so it's been eventful, let's put it that way.
It's a life of a freelancer, but like every single time we have a guest, I'm like the sort of unknown, sort of uncharted waters that somebody might come into you and say like, "Hey, here we have a project. Would you be interested, working for it?" And you never know like
Yeah.
who's going to, contact you. I mean,
Oh,
that's a great example.
yeah.
That must be an insane thing going to, well, China from UK too and working with them. How long have you been there? Or like
So
you said that you were going back and forth, right?
yeah, I went over. I was going over in really small chunks, like 3 weeks, and that was over. I think it was 2014 to 2016.
Oh,
Uh,
right. Okay.
yeah, and
Now, would you say like going into more of the freelance concept art role, like, well, listening from that alone, but like, do you also had like any hiccups or like, things that are, let's say, mountains that are hard to climb, but you somehow have to, break through them? I don't know if I make any sense. Just like stop and say, Patrick, what are you talking about?
a lot. It's really weird. I just went. I just went with the flow. Whatever came in,
Mm,
I just did it, and then I found doing that. I learned really quick
yeah,
things that I didn't like doing. So I didn't like doing with work with advertising agencies. And
right,
they were a nightmare, because it was like I wasn't dealing with a director or a production designer. You'd be dealing with someone from marketing, and that quickly I learned. I think I had about 5 or 6 of them, and then I went, "Whoa, this isn't happening. I'm not doing this anymore." Well,
Mm.
I literally just went. So people would come up and say, "Oh, I want to do this," and I'd be like, "Well, as if they're paying me, yeah,
right,
I don't care. I'll give it a go." And then, of course, it was a good thing to learn that to do things that sometimes you get stuff through, and I know I've said this before to people, and that is, you get stuff through and you're absolutely like terrified, and you're like, how the hell am I going to do that?
Mm.
They all end up being the best jobs. Whereas I find the ones that you think are going to be easy, they're the ones that will slap you in the face. They're the ones that are like, you really learn your lessons from taking them and thinking you're being clever. And then it all ends up being an absolute disaster. Um, so that was another golden rule that I quickly learned, was take the jobs that you think are going to be really difficult, the jobs that are going to be a challenge, because they're the ones that are going to help you grow as an artist. But not only grow as an artist, but also just grow as a person, because when you freelance, you've got to keep your wits about you. There's so many people out there that will try and rip you off, or just like nefarious types of things. So you've always got to keep your head about you, I think. um but yeah, I just went with the flow. I just went with the flow. I'm amazed I'm still here, to be honest.
Mm. Mhm.
yeah, we're not surprised.
Yeah. Yeah,
So going out of the comfort zone all the time. Sorry, Kamila.
I just wanted to say
Um,
again, going back to Matrix, because this kind of connects with what you just said, like taking a job and then making it work. Like I said yes, let's do it. But then, as I got my first brief, and it was this just enormous, city, and I
Yeah.
was still working on my old laptop. I just realized, okay, like I have to buy something better, because like the render time of each scene, it was like it took few hours. It's okay, I can't work like that. So in the first week, I bought completely new PC. I changed everything, like a new render program, everything, But I was so thankful, because it changed my workflow completely. And I think I made like a huge progress in this year just because of that, because I had to. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's another interesting thing. We've all done it. We probably all of us have started off working on laptops,
Mm.
and the thing you can sort of get away with it. And I learned pretty. I mean, I spent quite a few years just working on different laptops, and I ended up getting. In fact, I've still got one that's like it's a bit of a monster laptop. Um, but it will only get you so far, and that was another thing that I learned was plow everything back into the business
Mm.
and put everything back into the business. And even though you think to yourself, right, I'm going to be skint, but you're not really, because by getting better equipment means you can do the bigger jobs, you can get faster results. You're more confident with your work because you've got this bit of hardware that can back you up, basically.
Mm.
So that was another thing that I learned pretty quick was, let's, and I still do, try and put as much back into the business as I possibly can. Because your kit is pretty much everything these days, especially with a lot of the bigger scenes or stuff that you're working on. Again, your render times, if you're doing render plates to paint over, you've got to kick them out pretty quick. You've got to be able to work pretty quick.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know what it's like when I sometimes you try and tell someone like I was talking to some students the other week and they're like, how long does it take you to do a piece? And I'm like, well, ideally you want to get something like that done, a piece done in a day, or 2 or 3 of them done in a day at a certain quality. And it was like this gasp that came out from the students. And I don't think they realize, there is a huge amount of pressure on
Mm-hmm.
you to perform on every single job. I mean, you're only as good as your last job. So yeah.
right. Absolutely true. And especially when you're freelancing too.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Like games, sort of when you're in-house. I mean, I'm quite sure in some places, some people might be like, yep, that's pretty much similar. But like when you're a sort of a lone wolf freelancer, that's where, they basically see your hands and like, are you actually working? We need something done now because
Mm.
Yeah.
we're paying you money.
Yeah. And
Um,
I'd learned that a lot as well from working with DNAG because they have a certain standard that they want to hit. Um, so I've always been pretty fast. Um, working with them was more like going into boot camp, and I got even faster. But I also got to learn, a lot more new tricks, and to get stuff to that certain level as well, which was really good. Really helped me out that working with those guys. I still, I'm still under contract. I still have a freelance contract with them now, and they're brilliant. I work for them any day of the week. They're great.
Mm.
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And just to anyone listening to it as well, like if you keep your head up, speed will come. Like
Yeah,
that's the thing. It doesn't come overnight at all.
no, 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 definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah.
No. So going back to the Shanghai timeline and Beijing timeline, uh, what was next? What would be what was the next sort of step that you took? Because
Well, yeah,
I mean, I was looking before, like I messaged you some time ago, and then yesterday and today in the morning, I just quickly looked at your stuff and I just see all those movies and I'm like, holy shit, I'm getting stressed. I'm, feel, I'm feeling a bit, I feel a bit of a tingle in my chest, honestly. So Yeah, what was the next thing for you?
So, so I jumped on with DNEG, and it really snowballed working with those guys because I mean, literally, half the stuff I don't even put up because we could literally be working on one film one day, and then literally, the next day, uh, Ravi, who was head of art, he Zoom call me and go, actually, I need you. Can you jump on this? And he found out quickly that I love that because I have the attention span of a flea. I'm
Mm.
terrible, honestly. I really am bad, and I like it when I've got multiple projects going at once.
Mm.
So sometimes I could be working on one film, and then he'd say, I need to jump onto this TV show, and then I'll be back onto that film, then back. And sometimes it could be like within the space of a day, I'd be working on two separate things, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And then I got a couple of gigs um, working for some games companies. So I was working for a games company who were partly based in Iceland and partly based in Shanghai,
Mm.
and they were doing a game for Apple, which was going to come out on Apple Arcade um, before they decided to scrap all the games. And I spent about 2 years, I think, working with those guys and doing obviously doing freelance work at the same time. And I was art directing that game. And yeah, from that, I just jumped on, I think, what was it? I would have gone back to DNEG after that. It's all like a bit of a blur, to be honest.
Mhm. Oh, yes,
You
probably. I
know,
mean, if you can't remember, that's fine, you
it's
know?
really weird because sometimes you'll
Yeah.
be watching stuff and you'll see films that come on and you go, I recognize this script.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you go, oh, I worked on this. And you go, oh, yeah, but you're not on the credits
Mm.
because, 9 times out of 10, you don't get on the credits.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
It sucks.
it, it really is bad, really bad.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's another separate topic, that one. But uh, yeah, it's just crazy that you tend to work on so much stuff. And I to be honest, I just unless it's a full project, I tend really not to think too much about them. I remember doing some stuff for Aquaman. It was literally, I remember putting it up because I said to some friends, I said, I'm going to have to put it up because they got me to design a hook, like a big industrial hook. And I did this furnace thing as well, but it's for Aquaman too. But what made me laugh was there's a whole battle sequence where he's using this hook. And I remember sitting there in the cinema and going, that's my hook. And it's
Nice.
just like something that's that bad. I've just designed a hook for God's sake.
Mm.
It's getting used and it's there on screen, and I knew it was mine because you could all the little bits that I'd added in to make it not look like a normal hook. And it was there. It just made me laugh, and I thought, I'm putting that up. That's going in an art station. I worked on Aquaman. What did you do? I did a hook. And it's just like it's not all the glamorous stuff that we get to do. Some of the stuff we get to do is just appalling. Um,
Yeah, well, to help the production, I guess,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
set design.
Yeah, I
But
did
yeah, I
some
mean,
poisonous plants for Aquaman too, and I also put it on our
yeah,
station. This is a part
yeah,
of the job, right? Like this is not always this gigantic keyframes or whatever. Sometimes you have to do like boring props and
that's
else.
it.
Yeah.
But again, it's all part of the job, and I think sometimes people don't realize that there's that other side of it. I mean, most of the time we put stuff up, we put stuff on our station, and it's all the nice, shiny, glossy stuff. But I don't think people realize all the design work that's gone in previously on things,
Yes.
and it's all like the really, really bad scrappy paint overs or the really bad thumbnail sketches that you've done or
Mm.
really horrendous blockouts in 3D. Nobody sees them. And even the directors, nobody really sees them. It's always really just like the finished sort of article that you get to send over. Um, but I just thought that made me laugh. doing stuff like that.
Mm.
But yeah,
And
so
uh,
literally from working with DNAG, it was just like multiple projects literally every other week. Um, and again, dipping my toes in and out with the games industry. And again, I worked on a space pirate game that we really wanted to come out. It was absolutely brilliant. We were having such a good laugh, and I'd spent about 2 years, probably longer, on that one. And they'd even built a full studio over in Spain, and there was about 300 people in it. And then literally one morning, bang, it had gone,
Mm.
which was a bit heartbreaking. But again, it's the kind of industry that we're in. Um, but it's I just keep whatever comes through. I'll just kind of take on within reason as well. I've learned
Mm.
that as well over the years, is to know which projects I wanna jump on. Sometimes I'll get stuff through and I'll go, that's not for me. It's
mm,
not really what I want to do. Which I suppose is nice to be actually be in that situation as well, where I don't feel like I'm forced to take everything on.
Mm.
right.
So that's always nice.
Yeah.
So do you think you kind of overworked yourself at some point because of that? Like as a life of a freelancer, I'm like, oh my God, I have this free sort of offers. I'm gonna take them all. And like then the other one comes and like I know that I can't physically do it, but it's like a apple in the Garden of Eden,
Yeah,
sort of like
yeah,
you want it. Some
yeah.
some stuff might pop out of it. Now that you're more selective, right, with what you're like
Mhm.
choosing to work on, like where that decision came from.
I mean, I don't think I've ever burnt myself out.
Right.
I love the job too much. I, I,
Mm,
I have a golden rule, which is I'll never do more than two things at once. I've tried it with three, and it's ridiculous. You can't do it. You really can't do it. You're going to make yourself ill. Two is quite comfortable because even when I'm working on one, I've always got my own work going at the same time because it helps me. It injects ideas into the brain, and one project feeds onto another project, and it's just nice to have that extra thing going all the time. And that's something that I always do. So if there's two projects and I think, yeah, I can do them, as long as they're not huge mammoth projects, which I've had the last couple of years. I've had some big ones, and I've gone, I'm not even going to take the chance of messing these up.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, when there's smaller gigs or gigs where I'm not going to be on it as long, um, definitely two jobs. But I don't get burnt out. I love it too much, and
mm,
sometimes I work till you know 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, depending if I'm in the mood. If I get really into something, the day can go in a blink of an eye, and the next thing you know, it's pitch black again, and it's 10 o'clock, and you think, right,
Yeah.
I better get away from the desk. Yeah.
Mm. I'm constantly thinking, because how did you learn to do concept art? Like, I get it that you were always like sketching and everything, but like when we started out with Patrick, we actually met on the one online course from Maciej Kuciara from Lab Square. So we kind of had like in 2015 a lot of maybe not a lot of YouTube tutorials, but we had Fengzu, we had some online courses and everything to learn. But how did it happen for you?
So right from a really early age, I was always painting.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I like to do is I like to tell stories in my work, and that's just literally carried on right the way through. Um, and it's just again, it's just kind of been that, if you see like keyframe art, well, keyframe art is basically you're telling a story, through that. But I think it's definitely come from all this imagination as a kid and just wanting to do it. And to be honest, it was the only thing that I could do. Everything else I was useless at. I was useless in school, but I could paint and draw.
Mm.
And my art teacher, bless him, he was brilliant. My art teacher would he would give you something to do or give the class something to do, and he knew I would have it done within like 20 minutes or whatever. And then he'd say to me, why don't you have something set up as a sideline so that when you finished, I don't have to worry about you. You can do your own stuff. So I was doing fantasy art paintings probably at the age of like 13, 14. And he would come round and he would like say, you know, have you tried this? Have you tried that? But he would literally just give me free reign to do, I'd do the classwork, but then do that. So that was,
Mm.
again, that's fantastic for me. And it just felt natural that when I left school, that was what I was going to do. And even now, you know, it's just great. I don't think of it as a job. You know, I don't think of it as a job at all. You know, and people ask me what I do, and I tell them, and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And the people pay me to do that. It's just madness. You know.
Okay, I understand. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I think you've pointed one thing, well, since the beginning, which is very important, and that is basically having fun. Like some people might find some kind of motivation to push forward, or they're disciplined, or they're looking for those kind of things to hook on. But once you start to have fun, you're like you don't care.
Yeah.
You just go on, and everything turns into blur.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're not having fun, then there's something wrong. You
Mm.
know, and that was one of the things with the game industry. It got to the point where I wasn't having fun anymore. You know, there was no fun in it. It was getting up, going to work, and it was just constant hassle all day. And you know, I've been doing this now. I think I'm in my 12th year as a freelancer, and there's not a day I don't regret doing it. You know, it's just been brilliant every single day. And yeah, there's been times when I first started off and it was tough, and you know, obviously you've got worries because there's no safety net because you're a freelancer. You know, you've got a house, you've got kids, you've got to, you know, keep everything the roof over your head sort of thing. But as regards to the work, it's just brilliant to sit down and just be let loose and be creative and just go ahead and do stuff is just
Mhm.
incredible. You know, it's a really fantastic job to do. I absolutely just I'm obsessed with it, to be honest. You know, it's just great fun.
Mm. I
Yeah,
think you
absolutely.
are the perfect person to ask about this because you have been around for so long. So, what do you think about the current state of our industries? I know it's a
Yeah,
tough one.
it is. I mean, I've never seen the games industry this bad ever,
Mm.
and I have a lot of friends who are now at that level where they're either studio heads or are really, really high up in the industry. Um, and we all say the same thing. We've never seen it. We've never seen it this bad. Um, there's probably a multitude of factors that have gone on, which is why the industry decimated at the moment. Film industry has just had a really bad look, really, really, really bad run of luck. I mean, COVID was amazing for
Yeah,
us.
it was.
Honestly, I mean, I don't know what it was like for you guys, but most of the guys that we had that much work. It was just
Yep,
ridiculous.
same here.
And it was great. And people were going, "Oh no, we've got to work from home." And I'm like, "Yeah, bring it on." You know, I've been sat at a desk for 7 years.
But
You know,
guys, maybe we should rephrase it like not COVID was great, but the
yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah,
the pandemic time.
yeah, um, yeah. It was so the industry had that really weird uptick for quite a few years there, and then obviously the strikes came along, and I was on Alien when the strikes happened. And we were thinking, oh, surely it's going to be, you know, a few months, you know.
Mhm.
And it just went on and on and on. And it's absolutely decimated the industry. And then, of course, we've got the wonders of AI that have come in
Mm.
on top of that have exasperated things. So at the moment, the industry, I mean, is it? I can't say whether it's as bad as the last time when we had the last set of strikes. It probably is. It's probably worse than the last set of strikes. Um, it's just a really tricky situation at the moment. There's not a lot going on. There's not many productions that are coming out. You know, not like it used to be. I think streaming's had a real knock. I think they found out that the captive audience that they had during the pandemic is now gone.
Mhm.
Um, it's a bit of a weird one, so we're just going to have to say. I'm hoping that it's going to pick up a lot more. I'm following people on Instagram and that. I don't know if you guys have seen producer Patryk.
Mm-mm.
He does like a commentary on what's going on in the film industry, and he's going around and he's going onto the film sets, the film lots, and they're completely empty. And it's like, wow. And he was saying, like, how the percentage of people that are out of work at the moment is something like 60%, I think it is.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's tough at the moment. I just hope it picks back up. I really do.
I think it will
Hmm,
happen, but like I have to say, like the quality of the content that was coming out, like post-COVID times, because I think we produced a lot of games, a lot of films, but many of those were just not that good.
yeah.
So I think obviously, like I think there were like many, many, many reasons for the situations we are in, but just as a consumer, objectively speaking, like a lot of
Yeah,
films were just.
totally agree.
Mm,
It's. I think even now, I find it really hard pushed to actually watch something and think that was good.
Hmm.
There's tons of stuff that comes out. I mean, Apple are doing some really nice stuff.
mhm.
Um, but some of the stuff that comes out on some of the streaming platforms, and like, oh my god, you've spent how much? And it looks dreadful.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is down to the writers. The stories just aren't there. Yeah, there's a whole multitude of factors. And again, we've gotten into that cycle of just regurgitating everything again. Everything is
Yeah.
sequels, everything is, a reboot. Um, I think people now are getting a little bit tired of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a very, very strange time at the moment. Um, but I just hope it can pick up. I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will.
Yeah, I think so
I,
too. Yeah.
yeah, I think so too as well. Also, you can notice like the shrink of an art department, like on movies,
Mm,
some games too. And it's definitely turbulent time, but I think it's also the best to create. Like definitely push and push more. And it's a multitude of factors why it happened too. But yeah,
mm,
whatever. Let's go with something positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that's like a prevalent discussion with a lot of people that we have because everybody's. I mean, it comes from a place of worry,
mm.
which is totally understandable, especially as a freelancer, right? Like we're not like having like what is the time span that we're working on a project? Usually, it's short.
It
It's
is.
not that long. Yeah.
Yeah, you're lucky if you get um,
Sorry.
6 months, maybe 9 months.
Right. Yes.
But after that, it's like you're out looking for work again. So you're always on that constant treadmill. I've kind of gotten used to that now. I don't let it
Mm,
worry me as much. When I first started, it used to worry me. Now I just think, now it's part and parcel.
Mm.
You just keep going, and keep hammering social media, keep kicking your work out, and keep practicing. And talking to people as well. That's really important. Talking to production designers, getting to know people,
yes.
just networking. It's you've just got to do it more. I think more so now than ever. You've got to do that.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. So you also said that you enjoy more. Well, sometimes personally, I think like, God damn, I'd love to have some stability. Like I've been freelancing for 7 years or something, and then I found a job that's like more stable.
Yeah.
Uh, the difference is just insane when it comes not even speed, but just sort of having the safety net, I guess, over your head. Um, like I'm wondering how do you get accustomed to, well, freelancing in general? Like, my mind is also like, when you get, like, a contract or something, you're like, "Okay, 6 months of work, so cool." It's like, I'm gonna wake up, like, in 5 months, and then I can stress about it a bit more.
Yeah,
And then the time just flies by fast,
yeah, it does.
and then you're like, "Okay, um, what's next?" And you're starting to stress out.
Yeah,
Well, at least I do.
yeah,
So
yeah.
how did you get, used to it? I don't know if there's a way for me, but, like, I'm just wondering.
I think because again, I got lucky. I mean, maybe
Right.
I've got myself into a false sense of security because literally it was like job after job after job after job. Um, and just the more I did, it seemed like the more I was getting as well. Um, but yeah, it's I think you can't think like that because at the end of the day, you can go and work in a game studio, you can go and work, full time anywhere, and your job, no job is safe now.
Mhm.
So there's no point in even thinking. I
Mm,
just don't even think about that anymore because I could be working, as I have been doing. I've worked for, game studios over the last couple of years, and then all of a sudden, literally in the morning, bang, um, they're gone. Um,
right.
so I think it's just a mindset that you just have to get yourself into that you just makes you work harder, I suppose.
Mm,
Just kicking more stuff out and being more productive.
Yeah. And maybe
I
also
think,
enjoy it. Like, we don't know in
yeah,
which direction everything will go, so just
exactly.
enjoy the ride. And yeah, I think there's like no point into, worrying like every day, oh, okay, well, what will happen? And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Other,
Obviously, you can think about like plan B, like or whatever, right? And you should have like a financial,
yeah,
uh,
right.
yeah. I mean, I always try and think almost like 5 years ahead.
mm,
I always try and think, what am I going to be doing in 5 years' time? What's the goal to do in 5 years' time? Where do I want to be? I mean, I don't want to retire. I really just don't want to do that. I think I'll keep going until, I collapse at the desk or something like that. But I have no, it because it's just too much fun to not do it. Even if someone wasn't paying me anymore, I think I'd still have to do something.
mm.
Do some on a daily basis because it's just such great fun to do. Yeah,
Well, yeah, that's like that's a good thing to say too. Like, if you would have, well, because we are still doing it for money in the end of the days too. Like, we have to have, have to provide.
yeah,
Um, so if you would have an infinite amount of money, would you still do it?
definitely.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. There's nothing like it, is there? I mean,
No.
it's it's Sunday, and I was going to go and do some stuff in the garden, and I was out there yesterday, and then today it's really cold, and I thought, no, I'm going to sit down and do some stuff, and it's just nice just to sit down and just do a couple of hours, and you know, I've got a couple of projects going at once, trying to figure out what I'm going to do, and it just helps your brain keep active, and yeah, it's
Hmm.
it's it's just really really cool to do.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Oh wait, and
And
maybe
something.
put a twist on this question, like infinite amount of money. Would you start your own project, or would you still work for others?
Oh, that's interesting.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I
Those are the things where you tackle them when you have that.
Yeah. I mean, I have thought about that. I'd often thought, about setting up, like a sort of an outsourcing place, and you have
Right.
artists. And then I thought back straight away. I went back to what it was like managing artists, and, you
PTSD.
know, and I was like, "No, I'm not going to do that because I know what artists are like, and that'd drive me insane. It's like Herman Kitten
Mm.
time. So I don't know. I don't know.
It's
Uh,
it's it's something cool to think of too whenever you're like, I think our community, like community of artists, or like artists in general, we have so many paths that we can go after, right?
yeah,
Like, we seen people like go to for production design even, or like from production design to being a director.
Yeah.
Then like you have an outsourcing studios. Now there's, I saw some people working in architectural studios too as a concept artist.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the paths are just like sometimes I feel like the concept art is still sort of crawling because there's not a lot of people knowing about it, so they don't know
Mhm.
how to utilize it properly. Uh,
It's crazy. And the weird thing is it's the amount of people who are in the film industry that don't know what we do.
yes,
Um, yeah,
absolutely.
it's just like mind blowing. We are like the lowest of the low. And yet you think about the amount of work that we do and the amount of design work that we do for a film. It's not like, most directors don't like think of all this stuff up and it doesn't come from anywhere else. And it comes from us, but we just tend to be like, yeah,
Mm.
they're just
Mm.
like the pixies in the corner that do all the magic stuff. But we get very, very, very little recognition for what we do, which I find is heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Uh, I see stuff all the time. Think, wow, that's just so well designed, and that's beautiful design work. And yeah, people are very rarely shown in credits, and
Yeah.
that's only happened in the last 7, 8 years, where you've got the concept artists coming up in credits and stuff like that.
right.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a bit soul destroying sometimes when you worked on stuff and then you're not actually given credit for what you've done. Yeah,
So,
Mhm.
so do you think seeing that also throughout the years, kind of, I don't want to say disconnect you from the project, but it just feels like, okay, I did some work on this, that's done, let's go on to something new.
yeah,
Like you don't feel attached. It sort of helps in a way too, I feel like. I mean, it still would be nice to get some recognition for the stuff that you've been working on, right? But it totally feels like oh, I've got this one-time stint, spent some 6 months on it, on to the next one. Don't you feel sometimes it just sort of feels like, being in this continuous loop of, I don't know, a domino effect of like, oh,
yeah.
like how don't you like I know you enjoy it a lot and have fun a lot, but how can you keep this consistent level of enjoyment? Let's say. I'm not saying I'm not. I'm just like, trying to
I,
get the.
I I don't even know how to answer that. It's a bit of a tricky one. I mean,
I
I
don't think I would answer it too. I don't know what I'm
We're
talking
always
about
asking the
sometimes.
tough questions here, so.
yeah,
But you know what I mean? Sometimes it's just like, uh, maybe I think maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it's just because we're freelancing too. I mean,
Mm.
because you're freelancing. Like you said, you like to have few projects at once. So would you say working on just one and like if they would say, Cole, you're only working on one project, but and you can't do personal work,
yeah,
right? Like,
that drives me insane.
yeah, right?
Insane. Because I need that constant. I mean, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm on the spectrum or something like that, and it's like I just need to have that absolute chaos that goes on inside my head. Because I don't know what it's like with you guys, but I get to about 5 o'clock of an evening, and all of a sudden, it's like there's a million and one ideas
Mm.
that come out. Or when I'm just about to fall asleep, yeah,
Oh,
there they
that
go.
that
That
Yeah,
can
happens a lot, yeah.
yeah,
that happens
yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
But you know what's
but
crazy? As a freelancer, you have to be really organized, on one side. You
Yes.
have to, keep your finances in check and everything and, don't miss your deadlines. But on the other hand, like I get bored so easily with projects.
yeah, oh, I'm terrible. I'm just terrible, and that's why I have stuff going all the time. Because if I didn't do that, I mean, if I'm doing a piece, whether it's props or whatever, I like to try and get that finished in the day, because after that, I'm like really resentful. I'm really bored. I'm like, no, give me something else.
Hmm.
Um, sometimes you have to you've got to do multiple changes, and that's part of the business. And yeah, you've
Yes.
got to do that. But sometimes you just think, oh, really? It can be sometimes you can be working with someone and they're just like pixel pushing,
Right.
like.
Yes.
So if I've got something else that can occupy my brain and let loose for a bit, And then I can come back to that piece, and it sort of refreshes it and think, well, because at the end of the day, we're getting paid for this,
Right. Yeah.
and it's a job, And as much as I love it, it's a job. So you've got to do a decent job of it,
Yes.
Um,
So having what we've talked about, like you jumping into the industry of film too, the recent ones, like well, we talked with Nick a bit about Alien, well, a
A
lot
bit.
about Alien Romulus. You've obviously worked also on like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Masters of the Air. I mean, there's just so much. Um, like, how come did I mean, I probably get in like sort of a thing. How did you get in? Um, but like, how did you get in?
they, they were all
Mm,
different how I got all those jobs. And that was in the space of, was it 2 years or a year?
right.
And the first one was Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And again, prime example of networking. I'd spoken to Wes Ball numerous times on Twitter. Um, I was a big fan of Maze Runner films, watched them with my son. And he was really good. And we just used to have nice chats and so forth. And then he messaged me one day and he went, I'm a really big fan of your artwork. And I was like, oh, that's really nice, Wes. Thanks very much. And he says, I've got a couple of projects going. Do you fancy jumping on one? And I was like, yeah, sure. Thinking like, it's not going to be anything major. And I was like, what have you got? And he's going, well, I've got this one. I was going, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. And we were talking about that. And I went, well, what's the other one? He said, do you fancy coming on, help me on Kingdom and the Planet of the Apes for a couple of months? And I'm like, all right then, yeah, great. And that literally, it was that easy. He literally spoke to me on Twitter, private DM me, and I was like, okay, great, here we go. Nice job. And I was working on that, and I'd literally finished that one. And Ravi from DNEG messaged me, and he went, "Are you on holiday?" And I was like, I was just about to take 2 weeks off because I've just finished Apes. And he went, "You're not." And I went, "Why?" He says, "Because Patrice has just been in touch and they wanted an artist to work with him." And he said, "You'll just be working with Patrice, just you and him." And I went, "Right, okay." And he said, we put a pool of artists together. And he went, "Oh, I'll have him." And it was me. And so the next thing I know, I was working on Dune. And we can't show anything yet because we can't show anything until after the third film. But I was just redesigning spaceships and looking at the giant explosion that went off in June 2. And I wasn't really on that long, but halfway through working on that, Alex Nice emailed me. And I've known Alex for a couple of years, and we've just chatted. And we've never worked together, but we've always chatted on Instagram and always had a bit of a laugh. And he messaged me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh," I said, "I'm on June 2." And he was like, "Oh, right." He said, we've got a project going here. Do you want to jump on it?" And I was like, "What is it?" He said, "It's Alien." And I was like, and he said, "They're doing it for Disney Plus." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know if it's going to be on Disney. It's going to be a bit crap, that, isn't it?" And he's like, "No, it's." I went, "Listen," I said, "I'll find out how long I'm going to be on Dune." I said, "And then I'll get back to you," because I didn't want to mess up Dune and then and get some bad blood going. So he was like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, we're due to kick off in a month or so," and I'm like, "Right, okay." And literally, I got off, and then producers messaged me and said, "You're only on it for about another week and a half." So I was straight back onto to Alex and went, "How do we get on Alien?" And literally within like an hour, Naaman had messaged me. And I'd known Naaman from, Naaman was actually production designer on Mortal Kombat. So I'd spoken to Naaman, even though I never managed to get on it, but I'd spoken to him through Simon. And he's like, "Hey, Carl, do you want to jump on Alien?" And I was like, yeah, okay, great. And it just ended up being on that for about 9 months, I think. But that whole year, probably more than a year, was just like crazy. It was just like all the projects that I mean, I was such a huge fan of the Planet of the Apes films, going right back to the 60s one. Huge fan of what uh, Denis had done with Dune 1. So working on that was just like another dream. And then, of course, working on Alien and seeing Alien as a kid and being a huge fan of all them films, I was just like, oh my God, what is going on? Because
Hmm.
obviously there is giving me is I've won the lottery or something, because this is just mind blowing. This never happens. So to get them in that space of time was just so much fun. I mean, I loved working on Apes. That was so good. Because I was working with people like Andre Walliam, and oh my God, to see his work while his sketches, and then he'd just be painting, and I'd be like, oh my God, it's just insane what he does. Dalek was on there as well, um, Jeremy Love, and oh my God, the art team was just incredible. And then when we got onto um, Alien, it was like a reunion of people that we hadn't worked with. So there was Matt, who I'd known for a while. There was Alex, I'd known for a while. There was Dane, that I'd known. There was Chris Rosenware, that I'd known. And so it was just like we all couldn't believe we were all working together. It was such a good laugh working on those films. Again, I just got really, really lucky, and that
That's
time.
the time where all the stars are aligned
Yeah,
and like
it
it just
must have
pops
been.
off. But like
Must
for a
have been.
good reason too. I mean, it's not like you're just like a usual, person out there in the industry. Like your work speaks for itself.
Oh,
Exactly.
phew.
Uh,
Oh,
Hmm.
thanks. See,
so
I need to see that. I think I'm a load of rubbish, because I go on ArtStation, and you're like in tears after about 10 minutes, and you're going, "Oh my God, I need I need to get better. I really do need to get better." So when people say that to me, I'm always like, "Really?" I don't. I look at pieces after I've done them, and literally after 5 minutes, I'm like, "That's crap."
Hmm. Yeah,
What
that's the
now?
typical imposter syndrome, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I know you worked on so many projects, so it might be tough to pick just one. But if you had to, which one would be your favorite one, and
oh,
why?
that's a hard question.
Uh, you know what? I'm gonna say Romulus, because it wasn't because of the work, but it was because of the lads.
Hmm.
It
Mm,
that we had we had such a laugh working as that team. Um, it was just brilliant. Yeah, we all clicked. We all just gelled. We all just got on, and waking up each morning and looking on the Dropbox folder to see what everyone had done. You know, because everyone was in different time zones, and seeing that stuff was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. That's incredible. That's fantastic. And it just spurred everyone on. And the way that everyone was so up for um, having all these Zoom calls. And a lot of the time we'd be just be having Zoom calls just because we just wanted to have a chat, because it was almost like we were mates.
Hmm.
Uh, and that was just something that we hadn't had that before, I don't think. It was almost because everyone was remote. It was like a proper art department, but everyone was remote, and I think every single one of us was like, "This is just brilliant." This is great, and we had such a laugh. And then when we got invited over to go on set, well, that was just like the icing on the cake, and just hanging out with Fede and Neyman, and and all the crew was just brilliant, absolutely incredible, really fun experience. Yeah.
Awesome.
mm. That's pretty much what Nick said too. I'm like,
Hmm.
Alien must have been crazy fun. I mean, that's when you have all these people that have sort of similar, uh, well, values, but like sort of way of looking at stuff. Like the project seems okay. It's an insane project, but
Mhm.
the team is, so important.
I think it helped as well that we all of us had incredible imposter syndrome. The
Yeah.
first couple of months, we were all messaging each other. The amount of times I'd said to Nick, he'd be messaging me in the evening, and it'd be his morning, and he'd be like, "Oh my god," he said, "There's so much pressure," and I'd be like, "Nick, you're doing fine. Calm down," you know. And then I'd be speaking to Matt in the morning, and I'd be going, "Matt, I'm going to get fired," and Matt would go, "I'm going to get fired too." He says, "My work's crap. We're all out." And then we'd speak to Gus in the evening, and Gus is like, "Oh my god, no." He says, "The stuff. Neyman's not happy." He says he's not spoke to me within 24 hours. It's just like everyone was convinced that they were the worst artists ever, and I think that made us all knit together on that one. And after a couple of months, it sort of settled down. Everyone got full into the full swing of things, um, and it's just been a really lovely experience to
Mhm.
do. And going to the premiere and the after party and yeah, all sorts of stuff has just been really nice.
Mm.
Amazing.
So wrapping around that, and then a few more movies that you've worked on too. Obviously, you probably have a lot of going on at the plate, on the plate right now, as well. And I know it's a hard question, but it's sort of now with the 5 episode, like this one is fifth. No, this one is sixth because we've recorded one in the morning too. um, what is the next thing for Cole Price? What is the next thing that Cole is going to do? Just tell us something that you can, you
Yeah,
know?
I can tell you something, and
Yeah, that's the world we're living in, I guess, as a
I
freelancers and people in the
yeah,
industry.
I've gone and landed my foot in this one. Um,
But anything, even might be personal goals.
this this one, all I can say is that yeah, my next project is I'm actually stepping up in my role. So I'm
Mm,
now going as production designer.
congrats.
Mm,
So yeah,
congratulations.
don't say it yet. So we're just waiting now. We're just about to kick everything off. Um, we're about to go into R&D, and that will become apparent later on down the months when finally I can get maybe to say something. And I have my crew of minions that I've sorted out. But it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of hard work. It's incredibly different, and I just hope I can pull it off. But I just hope I don't mess it up. It's it's terrifying and exhilarating at the same time.
Hmm.
Mm,
So that's
that's
what's next, and
that that opens up topics for the next episode with Cole Price, everybody.
Yes, in few
So
months, yeah. But guys, you know what? Like I once heard that anxiety is half excitement. That the half of anxiety is excitement. So it kind of helps me to push through
yeah,
this negative aspect of it. So yeah, when I feel terrified. So
sometimes I wake up and I think, what have I done? But I've known the director for a few years, and I've known the VFX for a few years, the VFX suit for a few years, and so we've wanted to do some work since before the pandemic. We wanted to do some work together, and they're very seasoned pros. Um, so it should be good fun. I'm hoping it's going to be good fun. Um, yeah, but there's a lot of pressure on us, but yeah,
mm, mm,
but it seems like a sort of a prevalent thing in your whole art journey that you still are, that person that goes out of your comfort zone. And I mean, stress and things like that are part of it, obviously, but you
yeah,
keep pushing. Like, I'm so in awe of people like you. I'm working with a production designer, and he's pretty much in the same boat as you are. And he's been working for years and years on that in the industry, and he seems so energetic and like having a lot of fun. And I'm like, I wish I would have as half as energy as you guys have. You know, I don't want to seem like this one, broken dude somewhere, but it's just I'm
I don't
mind
know.
blown.
It's really crazy is that I only feel like I've just started to get going.
Mm,
It's real, and I said this to my wife a few times. I'm getting older, and I'm thinking, oh my god, I'm really starting to ramp up the years now, and I'm thinking, I've only just started, and it's a really weird thing to think that, and I don't mean this in a depressing way, but life is extremely short, and from one minute, it's like I'm working in the games industry, now I'm in the film industry, and we think I've literally only just started to get going. I'm only starting to think that maybe some of my stuff isn't as bad as I think it is. I still don't think it's marvelous work. I think there's so many talented people out there, um, but I just think I know I've got a lot more left in the tank.
Mm,
Um, yeah. So I mean, I wasn't expecting to do this. It literally came out the blue. Um, the production designer stuff. Um, and I was quite happy just doing the concept work, but I will be doing the concept work as well. And I've said this to the team of guys. I'm not going to be not doing the concept art. And the reasons for that will become apparent over the next, 12 months or whatever.
mhm.
Um, so it's going to be fun, hopefully.
Wow.
oh well, fingers
Yeah.
crossed. It's amazing to hear. Like that's what we were talking about. There's so many paths that you can take, and you never know when, a
Yeah,
light will shine on you,
Mhm.
yeah,
sort of.
yeah,
It's just the perfect timing, and then obviously you like we might say it's luck too, but it's like it's being prepared. I always say that. You didn't just randomly stumbled across this thing that you have now. I'm quite sure of it. So yeah,
Wow, it was so
awesome.
inspiring to hear about your path and your journey. So thank you so much for sharing it with us. It was amazing, and I feel so inspired. I have to say, I love doing these episodes because I have so much energy after them. Like okay, I have to work on my stuff.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. It's been an honor. Thank you very much for your time, Cole. I'm gonna keep thinking about this thing for the next few months probably now.
Yes, yes.
no, it's been a pleasure. Honestly, absolute pleasure speaking to you.